Flosstube, it is Helen D. Today's video is going to be a little different. We're going to just talk, it's a let's talk framing. I'm doing this, I think I'm going to just call it part one, because on this video it will be all show and tell about frames, how to measure a piece, and then the tools and supplies that I use when I frame. And then in part two, I will go over how I pin and kind of close up or finish up a piece in the frame. So that's kind of how these will be structured. Before we start, there are as many different ways to frame as there are stitchers. So this is just my thoughts on framing. There are other ways. Also, framing can be done as economically as you want or as extensive as you want, right? That is personal preference. Even for me, it varies on the piece. There are many pieces that if I can find a standard frame, great, I will use it. If I can find a Goodwill frame, great, I will use it. And then there are some times when a piece has kind of been hanging around because I can't find anything, that I will order a custom frame. So that's kind of my thoughts on framing. So I have a bunch of different things to show, but I'll start out just talking about frames in general. So all frames, not just custom frames, there's a couple kind of standard things to think about when you're looking at frames. The first is, even though you said, oh, I ordered an 8x10 frame, the opening is not 8x10. On a frame, they do the measuring from the back. So like this frame says on it, because it was an as-is frame, is 7 1/8 by 11 7/8. 6 7/8 by 11 7/8. So that's what this is. But then you can see all frames have this lip, and that cuts into your piece. And that lip, it's not standard, but it's pretty standard that lip is 1/4 inch. So it's going to cut 1/4 inch on all four sides of your piece. So I keep that in mind when I'm ordering a frame, so that if I want 1 inch of fabric showing, I order extra so that my inch will still be showing once I get that 1/4 inch, which is actually 1/2 inch on both sides, covered up. So that is the lip. And then the other thing that people talk about when they talk about frames is the rabbet. The rabbet is the depth. I don't know why they call it the rabbet. That's the depth of the frame. So this frame is just over 1/2 inch. It's about 5/8 of an inch. That, to me, that's like perfect. I can fit everything I need in there. The concerning thing about the rabbet is you have to think about, what am I framing and how am I framing it? If I'm framing a piece and I'm wrapping it on foam core, I need to account for the width of the foam core and then whatever I want to put on the back of it. I can go with a skinnier frame. If I'm putting something with glass and then I want a spacer, because the spacer lets there be airflow so that your piece doesn't get moisture in it, well, then you have the glass taking up space and the spacer taking up space, and your piece and whatever you have on back. That needs some room. To me, this 1/2 inch, I could fit everything in there. This one here that I want to show you, this one has what they call a very small rabbet. And this would be more of what you would find like at a thrift store, or even some of the ones like pre-mades on the shelves, because those are made for pictures. And pictures don't have all that extra stuff, and they don't have the width of the foam core. So this one is very narrow. This one is 3/5. So it's 3/5 of an inch. I would have a hard time, I couldn't use glass in this frame because there's just not enough room for the glass, the spacer, the foam core, the backing. Too much. As you can see, like here is, I already have pre-cut for this one. Here's my foam core, which is about 1/8 of an inch. And here's a piece of mat board that I'm going to use on the back. Like, that's almost to the edge. When I wrap my piece on this, it's going to be like, that's it. There's no extra space. So that's something to keep an eye out for when you're ordering, if you're ordering online or if you're ordering in a store, if you go in and you ask about a frame. If you go in and you ask, then you're talking to someone that knows about frames, so they should be able to help you. You want to make sure that your rabbet, your depth, is deep enough for what you want to put in it. So that's kind of the basics of the frames. So when I'm ordering a frame, the first thing I do even if I'm not even gonna order, I measure my piece. I iron my piece and I measure it to see what size it is. So I grabbed this one because it was already ironed and I measured it, and I measured the widest spot and then the tallest spot. And this one came out to be 8 1/4 by 8 1/4. It happened to be square. So then I think, all right, it's 8 1/4 by 8 1/4. Can I fit that in a standard frame? How much extra fabric do I want showing? Sometimes you have a piece where, you know, this is kind of just a very basic fabric. I don't really care if it's a little tighter, but sometimes you might have a piece that the fabric is half the piece, right? You have this extensive, like, pretty fabric and you want that to show. You don't want to cut it off. So you might say, no, I want a lot of fabric showing. So you have to make that decision. That one, being 8 1/4 by 8 1/4, I would go with a 10-inch frame. A 10-inch, I actually am going to frame that in a standard 10-inch off-the-shelf frame. Because the lip will cut off a 1/2 inch, so that would make my 10-inch frame really 9 1/2 by 9 1/2. So I will have about, like what, 3/4 of an inch showing on each side, which to me is fine. It's going to fit in a standard frame. It'll keep the cost down. Perfect. If that was a weird size, that wouldn't look right, and I had to order a frame, what I would do is take that number, 8 1/4. When I order a frame, and again, this is just my personal preference, and like I said, this is if it's on a regular fabric, not something that I want extra showing. I like to order so that I have an inch of fabric showing on all 4 sides. So in order to get that, I actually need to add 1 1/4 inches so that we make up for what this is going to eat up. So I would take my 8 1/4 and then I would say, all right, well, if it's 8 1/4, I want 1 inch on each side, so that's 9 1/4, 10 1/4. And then I have to add another 1/2 inch, which would give me that 1/4 inch on each side of my frame. So that would bring it to 10 3/4. So when I ordered my frame, I would order the opening, which is this part, right, to be 10 3/4, which would then make the viewable side 10 1/4. My piece is 8 1/4, so that would give me 1 inch of fabric showing on all 4 sides. So I've ordered, there's a number of sites online that you can order from. I've ordered from several. My current favorite is pictureframes.com. So I'm just going to show you, and this is pretty standard of all the ones when you order online. So if you go to them, right, just their basic website, and then usually you click on the menu and it will have you choose your frame. You can choose by size, you can choose by color. I always go by color because the size is going to be standard sizes and that's not what I want. So let's just pick a black frame. I'm just going to pick the first one on there because they're all kind of be listed the same. So here is a classic satin black wood picture frame. So under the listing, once it loads, it's going to show you the details about the frame. So this one says down here, description, a little description of the frame, material, wood. For my framing, I need a wood frame because I'm going to be hammering into it and I need something wood. And then it says width 7/8 and rabbet 1 inch. So what that means is the width of my frame here is 1 inch. The rabbet sorry, the width on this one was on the one on the picture is 7/8. The Rabbet is an inch. An inch is gonna give me all kinds of space. So I wouldn't have an issue with that at all. Just keep an eye on that width. There was another one there that called itself a narrow frame, which I bet has a smaller Rabbet. Let's look at that one. Although that might also be talking about the width is narrow. So that one is a smaller Rabbet, width 7/8, and then it says Rabbet 1/2 inch. Right, so it says that information on it. So once I've picked my frame and I'm like, that's the one I want, which ordering online is a little tricky because you're always kind of rolling the dice. It will say right under the picture of your frame, here's where you choose your dimensions. So we wanted ours to be 10 3/4 by 10 3/4. So you put those in, and then it will update all of your sizing information. And it will tell you what the outside dimensions would be, and then the inside dimensions that you picked will be there. And then it will have a price. This one says, without any coupons or anything, it would be $50. And then on pictureframes.com, you also have to choose, do you want just the frame? Or they don't offer glass, but they offer like a clear acrylic. I've never tried that stuff. I just get mine open. So you have to click like frame only or what your other options are. So that's how you decide your size. Sorry. So that's the measuring. And then you would order the frame. I will say all of the framing websites have coupons. Keep an eye out for the coupons. And I would look for a coupon that is both, it includes a percentage off as well as free shipping or flat rate shipping. Right now that one happened to have a $10 flat rate shipping code right on the front page, but it's just the $10. It's not that plus an additional amount. Shipping on frames is pretty expensive, so that really helps keep the cost down. So that's how I go about measuring and ordering the frame. Now I'm going to go through some of the supplies that I used. Again, there are many different options and many different price points. I did not get all of these things on the same day. This is stuff I have acquired over years of doing things, trying new things, finding what has worked for me. So, trying to just make sure when I'm done with something, I can move it out of the way. So we'll go back to this little frame I showed you because the first two things that you're going to need are foam core, and I like to put some mat board on mine. So the foam core, I'm looking for an acid-free foam core because this will help. The acid-free is better with fabrics. I've been getting my foam core at Michael's in the framing department. It's 1/8 of an inch thick, so it's narrow. It's an acid-free foam core. It comes in a ginormous sheet, like 30 by 40 inches. The last time I got some, I asked them at the desk, I'm like, how much would it be for just the giant sheet? She put it in the computer and it was $10 a sheet. So for the big giant sheet, which then I cut myself. They will cut it for you. If you were going to a framing store and like just for example, Michael's, because that's the one I use, because that's what I have. If I'm ordering a frame from them with their coupons, you can order just a frame and then frame it yourself. You don't have to have them frame it. If you're ordering just a frame, you could also say, could I also get the foam core and the mat board? And then your coupon is active on those things as well. And they'll cut it for you when it's all good to go. So I have my mat board and my foam core. I also like the acid-free mat board. This is sold in the framing department, but they have it, you don't have to ask for it. They have big sheets. In the framing video, I'll talk about how I cut that and stuff. Okay? Then I have the pins for pinning. I like to pin my things. Some people lace, some people use sticky board. I like to pin. So for the pins, I've been using Dritz bridle and lace pins. These are a stainless steel pin. It does say it on the back. And you want the stainless steel because that prevents rust. So these are the Dritz bridle and lace pins. These are available at big box stores, Amazon, but they're probably more expensive there. I got this one at 123. This was pricing. The foam core, like I said, was $10. The big sheet of mat board was $9. The pins, last time I bought them, were $3. And there's quite a few in here. It's 250 pins. So that's what I use for pinning. And then sometimes I lace after to keep the stuff out of the way, the edges. Sometimes I just tape. So depending on what I do, I need a heavy duty thread, something that you can kind of pull and it's not going to break. I've been using this one. It's Americana quilting thread. This is from Joann's. It's 99 cents. So that's the one I've been using. The other thing that I use if I'm taping the edges, and then at the very end, if I want a piece of like a covering to keep the dust out, I've been using Score tape, S-C-O-R, and I will list all of these things below. This is a thin, I get the 1/2 inch double-sided acid-free tape. So, and this one is nice because it is like really easy to rip. You don't need scissors, you don't need to gunk anything up. You can just rip it with your fingers. So those are the things I use to get my stitching mounted. Then once it's all mounted and I'm ready to close everything up, a couple other tools. You have to decide, how am I getting it in there? Did I use glass? Did I not use glass? And how am I closing it up? So if you use glass, this is a standard store frame, which is why it's reflection-y, because it's not museum glass. There's Emmy drinking my water. So this is just a standard frame. You want a spacer in there so that there's some airflow. And what a spacer is this long, skinny piece of plastic that has a peel-off sticky tape on one side. And I like to get them that are the 1/8 of an inch thick, that come in different widths. Again, so that I'm using as little of that space in the frame as possible, but still giving it what it needs. So this is your spacer. Where can you get these? In the past, I've gotten some from Michael's in the framing department. I think it 100% matters which Michael's you go to and who's working. Because sometimes I've asked and they wouldn't sell them to me, and sometimes I've asked and they would. You could always call first. Again, if you were ordering your frame from them, you could say, hey, I also would like some spacers. So the spacers, if you just needed a little bit, would be pretty inexpensive. Unfortunately, I can't find them where you can buy just a little bit unless they'll sell them to you at your store. So my spacers, last time I bought them, I bought them on Amazon. I bought, and I'll list it, it is EconoSpace 125 clear 1/8 of an inch. They were $60, but they were $60 for 20 spacers, and each strip is 5 feet tall. I will not need spacers again forever. The first time I ever bought spacers from Michael's, I bought 5 strips of spacers, 5 feet tall. They might not have even been 5 feet tall. That lasted me for years. So this 20 feet is gonna last me a long time. What I would suggest, if you think you need spacers or wanna have some, go in on them with a friend, right? It's 20 pieces, 5 feet tall. Go in on it with a few friends and split that cost so that you all have some. You can cut these just with scissors. There's nothing fancy about that. So that's your spacer. So then you've got to decide how you want to end the back. I have now the Logan Dual Drive Elite. This is called a point driver, and it's basically a fancy nail gun. This was kind of an investment. I decided I was doing enough of them that I wanted to break down and get one of these. This would be a great, like, we have no idea what to get mom for Christmas or Mother's Day or her birthday. You could ask for one of these. So I just looked, I did all my pricing before I started this. This goes right now from anywhere from $50 to $70 online. So this is kind of the investment piece. I'll show you how to use it in the framing video, and I always store mine with nothing in it, so I don't need to worry about it. So this is the point driver. You squeeze it and it shoots the points out this way, and then you have to buy the points. I like the flexible points. They have two different kinds. The flexible ones are meant so that when you have something in there, you can bend them up. Like on a picture frame that you get at the store, sometimes you can bend them up to take the picture out and then you bend them back down. That's what the flexible ones are. This little thing is about $8 for 600, which is like a lifetime supply of points. So you could also go in with a friend on your point driver if it's someone that you live close to, so you'd both have access to kind of use it. So if you don't want to use or invest in the point driver, there are all kinds of other ways to close up on the back. So don't feel like you need that. Like I said, I didn't buy that until a year and a half or so ago. So there's other ways. So the easiest way, you can use the back of your pre-made frame. If you have a piece, this one is mounted on foam core, but there's no glass. There's no extra stuff, and this particular frame happened to be big enough that I could put the back on, and those little bits that are already on there, held it in, no problem. Easy. So what if you have one that won't fit in there? Then you can do different things. So these are actually kind of the same. Well, this frame is usually hanging behind me. You've seen it before. This has my seasonal piece in it. These pieces are finished. This is some of the earlier stuff I did, and they're on sticky board, so they're thinner than the foam core. So I can use the regular back on that frame, like my fancy hanger. But there are some things I put in this frame because I swap it out that are on foam core, and I can't use the regular back. So I have these pieces here. This is called a spring clip, and it just bends over. And I have some to show you. So it screws on, that's why you need the wood frame. It screws on there, and then it kind of has some give to it. So that's called a spring clip. Unfortunately, I cannot find these to buy more of. I have a bunch because one time when I was ordering from American Frame, which is another frame online company, I ordered a frame and I liked the frame, and then the next time I ordered a frame, I ordered a bunch of extra supplies because I was already paying shipping and their supplies were very inexpensive. I think these were like 5 cents a piece. However, the shipping, like I said, the shipping is a lot. So because I was already paying the shipping with something else, I threw a bunch of extra stuff on. So that's where I got those. I also bought a bunch of screws. So I'm set. So those are the spring clips if you can find them. This piece I wanted to show you was one that it has glass, so it has the spacer, it has the foam core. I didn't have enough room for anything back there because it was a thin frame. So I just have it held in with a couple of those spring clips, right? It's good to go. And I didn't even cover the back of this one. This is just how it is. If you can't find the spring clips, there are still more options. This is an offset clip. I just bought these at Joann's last night. They were $3.29 for a package. The package has 8 sets. So I'm guessing that means, yeah, 8 clips, 8 screws. So these come in different depths. This one happened to be 1/4 inch. It's what I grabbed. So this looks like this. Although you would actually use it on your frame like this. So you screw it into your frame and then it goes down and holds things in. Now this one, I kind of would recommend getting a couple different sizes of these because you're not going to know what you need until the time comes. So like on this frame, this one, you probably won't be able to see this very well. This would be too big. I don't know if you can see that at all, but see it sticks up above? That would be too big. The 1/8 of an inch would probably fit fine. They also make one that's just flat, so that if you had something flush, like this one, you just put the flat piece on. You can also buy a piece that looks very similar to these things that screws on, and again, it's just kind of flat and it turns. So that way you have all kinds of options for closing it up. So once you have it closed, you might need a way to hang it. A lot of my stuff gets put on a shelf. I don't need a way to hang it. But if you do need a way to hang it, you can go fancy and use a piece of jute. You can get, I don't think any of these ones I grabbed have, no. You can get hanging wire to put on there. And the hanging wire I like to put on with, none of those have it. These things, which are called D as in daily, D-rings. So it's a little ring. You can see it kind of has a little raised bit right there and it's flat on the other side. You screw it in and then you take your wire and just loop it through and loop it through one on the other side, and that's how you can hang it. Or you can get a sawtooth hanger and do it that way. I prefer, here's the sawtooth, and these they sell, right? These things they sell everywhere. I prefer the D-ring personally because I have a hard time getting things straight, and if something's on a wire, I have an easier time kind of tipping it to get straight. One other thing to mention, if you order a frame online, a lot of times, and just look, they will come with a little mounting kit. So this is the one that came with my frame from pictureframes.com. It has the wire. It has these clips that I'm not really sure how to use. Again, I don't know everything, so I don't really know how to use these clips. It has 2 D-rings and it has the screws. So I would have my stuff except what I want to actually close it in there. That might be it. I think I've gone through everything on my table. 2 more things. They just got stuck. The little sticky on, they're called bumper pads. This is what you can put down here on the bottom. I laughed because these here, again, this frame's been around a long time. These are furniture pads that you would put on the bottom of your chairs to keep them from scuffing up. They work too. Just for something, if you have it hung on a wall, you know, it kind of, it's hooked here and then it kind of bends in a little, and this just protects your wall from getting scratched up. They sell these on Amazon. These are very common to find, but they're called bumper pads. And then the only other thing I use, I have a little X-Acto knife. I don't even know where I got this thing, but it's just like a craft X-Acto knife. This is what I use to cut my foam core and my mat board. So that's kind of measuring, supplies, information on frames. So like I said, part 2 will have actual pinning and closing things up. So if you have more questions, if I didn't explain something well, just put a comment down below and I'll keep an eye on those so that I can answer them as they come in. So I hope this was helpful.